In today's video, I want to share a super simple test with you, which could possibly save your life or the life of a loved one. Several years ago, after undergoing some genetic testing, I learned that I had a homozygous gene mutation, meaning both my mom and my dad gave me the same bad gene, which could possibly lead to heart disease. Now, knowing that epigenetics, meaning the way we choose to live our life, whether we exercise, what we eat, and so on, is far more important than the genes we were given, I wasn't too worried about this gene mutation. However, as many of you know, about a year ago, I struggled with a vaccine injury, which didn't just cause me to have pericarditis, an inflammation of the lining of my heart, but it also caused an epipericardial fat necrosis, which is a long fancy word of basically saying I had a fatty mass about the size of my fist between my heart and my lungs. So having had these two different heart issues on top of the gene mutation I just mentioned, I started to get a bit worried about the health of my heart. But I wasn't quite sure what to do, aside from everything I was already doing. However, I recently watched a video by Brian Johnson, in which Brian shared a very simple and free test to determine heart and cardiovascular health. Now, after watching Brian's video, I took the test he mentioned several times, and it really put my mind at ease. So I wanted to share this test and its significance with you, because I know that not all of you watch Brian, yet the test he shared is not only a good indicator of heart and cardiovascular health, but also of possible bad things to come, which could easily be prevented. The test is called Heart Rate Recovery Test. And heart rate recovery, or HRR for short, is the difference between your peak heart rate during exercise, so when your heart is working the hardest, and your heart rate soon after you stop exercising. The higher the difference between those two numbers, the better. So to take this simple test, you basically exercise somewhat strenuously for a bit. Unfortunately, even after hours of research, I couldn't find an exact time frame, meaning how long this for a bit should be. So I tried not just different exercises, but also different time spans. So again, to take this simple test, you exercise somewhat strenuously for a bit. As soon as you stop exercising, you note your heart rate. So to do so, you would need some sort of heart rate measuring device, such as a heart rate monitor or a smartwatch. So as soon as you are done exercising, you note your heart rate, you rest for 1 minute, then you note your heart rate again. The difference between those two numbers is your heart rate recovery. So let's say your heart rate was 160 as soon as you stopped exercising. 1 minute later, it was 140. That means your heart rate recovery is 20, which, according to the Cleveland Clinic, a heart rate recovery of 18 or higher is somewhat average and nothing to worry about, versus a heart rate recovery of 12 or below could be an indicator of possible bad things to come. Now, before we talk about what these possible bad things to come are and how they can be prevented, let me briefly show you another chart I came across, which I personally think is probably a bit more accurate than the Cleveland Clinic's simplified 18 or above, since it breaks it down into different age groups. So as you can see on this chart, not only does it break heart rate recovery down into different age groups, but also into excellent, good, and poor. So once you have taken your heart rate recovery test, you can find yourself on this chart right here and see how you're doing. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, after watching Brian's video, I took the heart rate recovery test several times. Not just to put my mind at ease, but also to have different data points for this video. So the first time I took the heart rate recovery test was after 10 minutes of quite intense jump roping. You can see my heart rate was all the way at 164. And 1 minute later, it had gone down to 100. So that right there is a heart rate recovery of 64. Now, since that seemed a bit too good to be true, I then did an intense weight workout, and at the end of my weight workout, jumped rope for another 5 minutes. As you can see, my heart rate was at 158, and 1 minute later, it was at 109. So even after an hour of quite strenuous exercise, I'm very happy to say my heart rate recovery was 49. But like I said, I really wanted to put my mind at ease and have different data points for this video. So I took the heart rate recovery test again the following day. This time again, I started out with 10 minutes of intense jump roping. You can see right here my heart rate was 152, and 1 minute later it was 111. So that is a heart rate recovery of 41. I then again did a weight workout. In fact, I trained legs, which is usually the most exhausting for me. And after about 40 minutes, as you can see right here, my heart rate was at 167, which is quite high for my age. And 1 minute later, it had dropped to 99. So again, I was quite happy to see that there was quite a difference between those two numbers. In fact, this time my heart rate recovery was 68. But just to be on the safe side, I took the heart rate recovery test one more time. This time I decided to just do cardio. So I started out with 10 minutes of intense jump roping, then jumped on the exercise bike for 25 minutes, and then finished my workout with another 5 minutes of intense jump roping. You can see my heart rate after this workout was 160, and 1 minute later it had dropped to 106. So that gives me a heart rate recovery of 54. Now, of course, I haven't taken the test several different times. After not only different forms of exercises, but different time spans. My heart rate recovery varies, but I'm really happy to see that if I take an average, which would give me a heart rate recovery of 55.2, so let's say 55, on this chart right here, it puts me into the excellent range for my age group, and even actually into the excellent range for a 20 to 29-year-old. So that made me really happy to see that even though I wasn't given the best genes when it comes to my heart or cardiovascular health, and I just recently had 2 different heart conditions, I have an excellent heart rate recovery. And of course, I am by no means sharing this with you to brag, but I wanted to share my results with you as well, not just this information, to show you that it doesn't matter what genes we were given or what our history is. We can always improve things. And that being said, if you end up taking this test and you have a heart rate recovery you are not too happy with, first of all, I would say repeat the test, because there are certain factors such as dehydration, lack of sleep, and so on, that can definitely affect your HRR. But if after repeating the test, you still don't like your number, there are things you can do to improve your heart rate recovery. But here's first of all why heart rate recovery is so important. A recent study published in the New England Journal of Medicine evaluated nearly 2,500 participants without prior heart conditions. And those with a low heart rate recovery had a 400% increase of all-cause mortality in a 6-year follow-up. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, heart rate recovery is a very good indicator of our heart and cardiovascular health, as well as of possible bad things to come, which again could be prevented. But these possible bad things to come, which can be indicated by a low heart rate recovery, are diseases such as coronary artery disease, diabetes, heart failure, hypertension, just to name a few. On top of that, a low or abnormal heart rate recovery also makes a person more likely to die from heart disease, according to research. And this is true for people who have had heart disease, as well as those who don't yet have diagnosed risk factors. So knowing your heart rate recovery is quite important. And it's such a simple and free test. And by the way, if you end up testing your heart rate recovery and you don't mind sharing, please share your results in the comments. So let's say you test your heart rate recovery, but you don't like your number. there are things you can do to improve your heart rate recovery and to possibly prevent disease. The most simple thing you can do to improve your heart rate recovery is to exercise. And the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, recommend that we aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise per week. So an example of moderate intensity exercise would be going for a brisk walk, whereas high intensity exercise would be going for a run or lifting weights. Avoiding factors that reduce physical fitness is also important in increasing heart rate recovery. For example, and this should be a no-brainer, but smoking can of course reduce someone's ability to exercise and their aerobic fitness. So therefore, a person can improve their heart rate recovery by exercising more and quitting smoking. Again, this should be a no-brainer, but coming back from Europe just recently, it is really crazy to see how many people in Europe, or more specifically, I was in Germany and France, how many people still smoke. So if you smoke, quit smoking and start exercising instead. Diet, of course, is also important. If we want to improve our heart rate recovery or just be healthy in general, we want to eat a diet mainly centered around whole foods and mostly void of junk and processed food. Stress management is also quite important if we want to improve our heart rate recovery or, again, just be healthy in general. And then lastly, prioritizing sleep is also quite important. We are learning more and more about the importance of sleep when it comes to our overall health. So it is no surprise that if we want to improve our heart rate recovery, prioritizing sleep and getting quality sleep is important. So I hope this video was helpful. I would love to know, have you taken the heart rate recovery test? And if so, if you don't mind sharing, share your results down below. If you took the test and you don't like your number, there are things you can do to improve your heart rate recovery and to possibly prevent disease. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this video was helpful. Any questions or comments, please share them down below. Always love to hear from you. And I hope I will see you in my next video. Bye.